So I can change the color. Maybe go darker. Nope, that's too dark. Lighter. Whatever, I'm gonna filter this anyways. You're watching Context, the show filmed on an iPhone, a ring light, and a whole lot of takes. Today we're going to be looking at everybody's favorite summer camp recital verse. Who've ever had to recite a verse in the morning at flag raising, and the unit next to you does Psalms 23, and you roll up with John 11:35. Jesus wept. Shortest verse in the Bible, only 2 words, and only 9 letters. And to read it for us, I told my wife I wouldn't do this, but here's Fancy Kevin. Jesus wept. So to understand the context for this verse, we got to look more at the beginning of verse 11, right? So why is Jesus crying? And the answer to that is because one of his closest friends, Lazarus, has just died. So who is Lazarus? Lazarus is introduced as a man who lives in Bethany, and he was the brother of Mary and Martha, who are introduced earlier in Luke 10, verse 38. At the beginning of John chapter 11, Jesus gets a message that Lazarus is sick. And to the shock of his disciples, he actually doesn't head right over. He waits another 2 days. He tells them that this sickness will not end in death, but that it's actually going to be used to glorify God. So after those 2 days, Jesus and his disciples leave from where they're going and head back over to Bethany. And I'm putting a map up here. You can see that this is kind of where Jesus was on the east side of the Jordan, and he is heading all the way over to Bethany, which is roughly 3 kilometers away from Jerusalem, where the Pharisees currently wanted to stone him. But Jesus isn't afraid of a few haters. And so he says that as long as you walk in the day, you don't stumble because you have the light of the world with him. Them, you, them. Because he sees the light of the world. And so he says, Lazarus is sleeping and I'm gonna go wake him up. And his disciples are all like, wait, but if he's sick, you should let him sleep. I mean, that's kind of how things work. And so Jesus has to tell them, Lazarus is dead. I am glad for your sakes that I was not there. As an aside, this is a clear example of why context is important. Because if you just listen to this, Jesus sounds pretty heartless. But he is not. So finally Thomas is like, cool, let's all go die with him. Because there's always one of those guys in the group, right? So they start their journey, and before he actually gets there, he runs into Martha. And she's upset, right? Because at this point, it has been 4 days, and Lazarus is gone. In contemporary Jewish culture, they had this belief that within 3 days, someone could still come back to life, like resuscitation was possible. So when you hit day 4, that was it. So Martha's very polite when she comes to Jesus and says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died, which roughly translates to, where were you? So Jesus tells her, your brother will rise again. And Martha is accepting of that. She says, yeah, I know that he'll rise again on that resurrection day. And then Jesus says, in another famous verse from chapter 11, verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, he will live. So she acknowledges him as the Christ and then secretly goes and tells Mary that he is here. And so Mary shows up and basically says the exact same thing to him. And the Bible tells us that he was groaned in his spirit, right? And so he asks her, where have they laid the body? And so they said, come and see. And this is where we get to verse 35, where it says, Jesus wept. And the people that are around, there's a lot of Jews, because they were so close to Jerusalem, that had come out to see this. And so they're like, oh man, see how he loved them. But Jesus wasn't crying for Lazarus. Jesus was literally about to go raise him back to life. So why was he crying? He was crying because it hit him right here. He was sad for the others that were sad. Because you have to remember, this was not the first person that Jesus saw die. Jesus had seen human after human after human after human for thousands of years. Humans that were supposed to still be alive today, gone. So here is Jesus in the flesh, weeping. And in the context of it, you have to think about it. He's about to do one of his greatest miracles ever. Yet he still identifies and acknowledges the pain of human suffering. And I think like that's one of the coolest things about Jesus is he doesn't just tell you, oh, I'm going to make it better. He feels with you. He understands that feeling of loss, that feeling of suffering. But luckily, that is not the end of the chapter, or even close. There's 57 verses in this chapter. So we continue. Jesus asks them, take me to the tomb. And he says, roll away the stone. And Mary's like, Jesus, it stinks. And he's been dead for 4 days. Even when you're alive, have you gone for 4 days without showering? It is not, no. But Jesus doesn't care. And he says, did I not tell you that if you believe in me, you will see the glory of God? Roll away the stone. And so they roll away the stone, and Jesus comes up and he's like, he prays to God and he says, this isn't for me, this is for them. And then he stands forward in a loud voice. He says, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus comes out.
All like this and stuff because he's still wrapped in his burial clothes.
So Jesus is like, get this man out of these clothes and a shower. He stank, am I right? And so they do that, and the Bible says that many Jews came to believe about Jesus. But that is also not the end of this chapter, because this chapter is very long. It then goes on to say that those Pharisees, remember from the last context, episode 1, John 3:16, those same guys have a meeting and say, this is a problem because people are starting to believe him. Which, in all seriousness, this man just raised somebody back to life. You should probably believe in him too. But they're all like, we have to get rid of this guy. And the high priest Caiaphas, he says it's better for one man to die for the entire nation, which if you think about it is the entire plan of salvation. He didn't even realize he was, prophesying. And so knowing this, Jesus wasn't really about to stick around. He went out into the wilderness away from the city. Our chapter actually ends with everyone trying to figure out, is Jesus going to show up to Passover? And spoiler alert, he does. And if you want to hear all about that story, it is currently Easter weekend, so tune into any church broadcast right now, and they will be talking about that. The story of Lazarus has been a popular one that has been depicted in so many different types of art. None of which are accurate, but we gotta understand they also thought Jesus looked like this. But back to Lazarus. It is considered one of Jesus's greatest miracles, and it is one that I hope, now that you understand the context, John 11:35 is not just the shortest verse in the Bible, but it is an awesome example of how much God cares for us. And so in our struggles, know that God is there with you, God is thinking about you, and God is feeling it. So until next time, thank you for watching Context. Ooh, bonus content!
Special music with Mika.
So, I know that this should not be the only account that you guys should be following. So I thought that I would start sharing other content creators that are putting out different content. So I'm going to start with my friend Ben Amoa, who is running the page, The Book of Benjamin. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, I'm going to clarify it right here. But follow up his page. He does an awesome podcast and a lot of content. And if you have content that you want to share to my 36 followers, and you want them to know about what you're doing, hit me up, and we're going to keep kind of building this community of believers. All right, take care.